Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Matt, and today I wanted to talk about language learning instruction in the school system. Some of the good things that it does, but for the most part, a lot of the bad things that people get out of language learning instruction in school. So, I think that for the most part, a lot of people have had a really negative experience learning a language in school, and unfortunately, that's kind of influence them and shape their viewpoints on learning a language for the negative. And I think that's really unfortunate. That being said, though, there are some things that the school system does really well, but for the most part, it's pretty bad. So, look, let's talk about the good things with language learning instruction. So, I think the first thing is that, even though it's, not ideal, in schools, there is this habit in language learning instruction being built, which is good, right? You are going to class every single day. You have weekly or daily homework. There is tests, and tests have been proven to kind of improve retention over the long term. And so that's good, right? People are doing language learning instruction frequently and building that habit, which is good. The bad side of that is that it's pretty much coming from, a do this or else mindset. It's kind of you're being forced to have this habit versus coming out of a joy of learning the language. So, is it the best habit? No, but it is consistency, and for what it's worth, that is good. I think the second thing is that there is this heavy emphasis on grammar, and so, you're more likely to, I guess, understand a lot of the grammar concepts than doing it independently on your own, right? Because there is all this time being put into it. There's this focus on mastery, learning all the rules. It's not very fun. You're being forced to do it, but you are getting a pretty solid grasp on a lot of the grammar rules and irregularities and things like that, versus kind of if you're learning independently, you're relying on a grammar book. The quality of those might not be so great. You have an actual human being talking to you in school, explaining those concepts, and you're probably putting more time in school versus kind of out independently. So that's a positive. But pretty much at that point, that's where the pluses end for the school system. And where do we start with the negatives? Well, I think it's just all over the place, really. I think the first thing is just right at the start that there really is, it's just not a fun process. And there's not a lot of motivation. So people are in those classes, they're forced to be there. They don't want to learn that language. There's not really excitement or reason. And a lot of the way that the system is structured is it's boring, right? There's this heavy emphasis on grammar. There's a heavy emphasis on memorizing vocabulary words. And for a lot of people, it's just to get a grade in a class. And so I don't care about learning. I'm just going to do whatever it takes to pass the test, to get the right answers on the grammar test, to memorize these words and forget it. And there's no context for why they're learning the language. So not only is it just boring, but there's also no pathway for it to be fun. There's no pathway to absorb and have fun with compelling content. It's just this kind of brutal, do this or else and get a grade kind of concept. And there really is no kind of reference point of where you're trying to reach with a skill set, right? Like, what am I supposed to have achieved after passing this class or getting a certain grade, right? It's just memorize these vocabulary lists, and these are relatively common words. Maybe we're talking about the supermarket or whatever. And those are, good and useful, but there's no context for why you're learning those. There's no pathway to absorbing content that is interesting. And so that's just a huge failure right at the start. It's not fun, and there's no pathway to getting to something that's fun. So that's a big problem. The second thing really comes down to the strategy and a lack of development of certain skills. So, some of the things that they concentrate on is generally, vocabulary acquisition and grammar. But even then, on the vocabulary front, you could probably acquire words a lot quicker if you're reading or at least using kind of electronic flashcard systems. So that's an ultimate failure right there, right? So it's stuck in the 1960s with the way that they do language learning instruction. I think the other thing is that there's really almost no focus on listening. And listening is super important, right? You need to focus on that skill if you're going to hear and understand what's being said back to you, whether that's to listen to podcasts or movies. And there's almost no time put into that. So, there might be a one-off exercise used by the teacher, but or watching a movie one week. But that really does not, you need to be consistent with that. There's got to be a lot of time, and I just don't think there's any emphasis on that skill set, which is highly detrimental to the student in the long term. There's also really no focus on reading and reading comprehension. There might be some one-off exercises and stuff like that, but there needs to be more consistency with that skill, because that's the other way you absorb the material, you learn new words, and you enjoy the language. So, and then there's practically also no kind of effort put into speaking, which is, and also another fun part. There might be some kind of group class exercises where you talk, but a lot of people are not necessarily motivated, so your language partner may be making errors. There's kind of this lack of effort, and so it's just kind of this big failure for learning on the speaking front as well. So you have basically 3 skills that are being highly neglected: speaking, listening, and reading. And there's almost no effort put into them, and the strategies that are being used to develop those skills is pretty poor. And then the underlying process is just bad in general. So, when you look at that, it's just this huge failure. And, for people that have had that negative experience with the school system, I encourage you that, language learning does not have to be this negative experience that you had at school. There's so many resources available online. And I think with the right strategy, you can have a lot of fun with it. You can make a lot of progress, and it doesn't have to be this grind. And that's what I try to concentrate with on some of my videos. So, don't get discouraged about that. There is a lot of fun and value to be had with learning a language. So I just wanted to jump in and talk about language learning instruction in the school system. It's really unfortunate because a lot of people are putting in that time, 4 years in high school or time in middle school, or, a semester in college, and really not getting a lot out of it. And it's unfortunate. It's just putting in time and investment to develop a skill that's never used, or you don't really develop a skill, and that's unfortunate. So let me know what you think. What's your experience been with language learning in school? And I'll see you in the next video. Take care.